Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webcast. My name is Christine Dursey Davis. I'm the executive director of the Ohio chapter of the American Planning Association and chair of the New Urbanism division of APA, and I'm your webcast moderator. Today is Friday, June 21st, the first day of summer, although I can't say here in the Cleveland area, it appears to be that way. We are going to be hearing the presentation, Unplugged, the Paradigm of Age-Friendly Communities. For technical help during today's webcast, you can type your questions in the chat box found in your webcast toolbar to the right of your screen, or you can call that 1-800 number for your content questions related to the presentation. Again, type those in the chat box located in your webinar toolbar. We'll answer those at the end of the presentation during the Q&A. If your question is for a particular panelist, I just kindly ask that you let me know who you would like to answer your question. Coming up on your screen is a list of our sponsoring APA chapters and divisions for 2019. A special thanks to all those participating sponsors for making these webcasts possible and free to members. Today's webcast in particular is sponsored by APA's Private Practice Division. You'll be hearing a little bit more about them in just a moment, so thanks to them for sponsoring today's webcast. Coming up on your screen is a list of our upcoming webcasts. And just to let you know, we just added one for next week, this coming up Friday, the Transportation Planning Division. So make sure you add that to your calendar. It's looking to be a really great session. And we are filling in, I can't believe it, our fall sessions are already starting to book up. So make sure you keep tabs of us on ohioplanning.org/planning webcast, because we're going to be listing those early fall sessions coming up here shortly. To log your CM credits for attending today's webcast, just head over to planning.org, log into your MyAPA account, and from there you can search for your CM activities either by the title of today's webcast or the event number, both of which can be found on our webcast webpage, ohioplanning.org/planning webcast. And this webcast has been approved for 1.5 CM credits for live viewing only. We do have some recorded webcasts that are available for on-demand distance education, 1.5 for ethics, 1.5 for law. You can check those out, view them on demand, and get your CM credits by visiting ohioplanning.org/planning webcast. And be social. Like us on Facebook, Planning Webcast Series, to receive up-to-date information on our sessions. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel by just heading over to YouTube and searching Planning Webcast Series. We have over 300 videos and over 2,000 subscribers right now. So be sure to head over there and subscribe to our channel so you can get the latest and greatest of our sessions. And we are recording today's webcast. Again, it's going to be up on our YouTube channel. Just head over to YouTube, search Planning Webcast. We'll also have a PDF of the presentation available at the conclusion of today's session. Again, just head over to our webcast webpage, ohioplanning.org/planning webcast. Okay, with that, I am going to turn it over to Ramona Malahi, who will be doing an introduction and getting us kicked off here. Ramona, I am changing the controls over to you.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate this opportunity, and good morning to everyone from Hawaii. And also welcome from the Private Practice Division. I think we all know that we as a population are rapidly aging, and that the nation's population of older adults is experiencing unprecedented growth. And since 2006, this chart shows that people aged 65 and over has increased from 37.2 million to 49.2 million in 2016, an increase of 33%. We do know at the same time that the proportion of older persons in the population varies considerably by state, with some states experiencing much greater growth in their older populations. For example, the 10 states as of 2016 is California, Florida, Texas, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, North Carolina, and New Jersey. They had more than half of the persons of 65 living in those 10 states. The impact of aging in America will touch every aspect of community life. And according to AARP surveys over time, a large percentage of older adults really want to stay in the communities where they live and where they have families and relations. An important component of aging in place is really having a community that helps older adults to do so. Creating age-friendly environments takes a group effort in a community. And as we see, in regards to communities that work together, it is important to foster independence among older adults and to develop policies that really support healthy aging. The World Health Organization, as well as AARP, have created a model to help cities prepare for a large increase in order for older adult population to age in place. In the United States, the AARP network of age-friendly communities includes 4 states, Puerto Rico, and 378 communities are members of the network. And that really includes 100 million people. Aging-friendly communities adapt constructive ways to enable people to mutually support one another to thrive. And APA, as you can see on this slide, has a number of resources to help you to develop more aging-friendly communities. Whether it's the PAS Report 579, which is an excellent report that works through a great process, or whether it's APA's policy guide. We do understand also that the demographic shift will also put strain on state and city budgets and demands on the novel initiatives responsive to local conditions. We are aware in some communities that tax revenue growth appears to have slowed down and that the growth in service costs and other expenditures are outpacing it. So the session today will explore the potential of new and diverse pathways to help shift the paradigm toward age-friendly communities. We're going to look at proactive friendly strategy to deliver services. We're going to also look at the quick funding to accelerate promising, ready-to-go projects. And finally, we'll take a look at a pioneering initiative of institutions of higher education around the globe to respond to the educational needs of an emerging aging population through innovative practices that benefit students of all ages. Today's speakers will help to provide that new lens to reframe the planning for healthy aging. Mildred Warner is professor at City and Regional Planning at Cornell University, and her work focuses primarily on local and government service delivery, economic development, and planning across generations. Brett Buzo is Associate AARP California State Director, and he has more than 25 years of public service, working closely in various capacities with elected officials, government staff, community service agencies throughout California to accomplish significant goals, including senior services. And finally, we have Carolyn Cicero, who's assistant professor at the USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology, and is a public advocate, educator, practitioner, researcher, focusing on the intersection of individual and population aging, urban planning for lifelong communities, social and health service delivery, overall to make local communities better places to grow old. And let me turn you to Mildred.
Thank you, Ramona. I'm really pleased to be able to talk to everyone today about the idea of how we shift the paradigm and begin to build communities for the future. So when we think about shifting the approach, I'm going to argue that while we're very focused right now on our aging society, this creates an opportunity for us to think about an all ages approach. For too long, planning has focused on sort of the working age population, and this attention toward older adults gives us the opportunity to also think about children, families, singles, older adults, people with disabilities, really put in a more comprehensive approach to planning and who we plan for. I also want to talk about how we move from a shift in attitudes to a shift in action, what this means for building new institutional partnerships, and the need to move beyond physical design, which has been so much of the focus, and also look at the issues of services and public participation. To do this, I'm going to draw from a couple of surveys. Back in 2013, I worked with the International City County Management Association, and we conducted a survey of all cities and counties in the U.S. called Planning Across Generations, and we had about 1,500 respond. And I have really good news for y'all today. We have gotten funding from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to repeat that survey, and it is actually right now in the field. We've had 600 cities and counties respond so far. We send it to the the chief administrative official of each city and county in the U.S., but we also have an open website link for you, planners, to answer this survey for your community. It's at http://icma.org/plan-for-all-ages. I will show this URL again at the end of my presentation, and Caroline will show it at the end of hers. So if you want to make a note and go there, but we want you to fill it out for your community. So you'll need to have your FIPS code ready so that we know which community you're referring to. We would like to find improvements in our attention to these issues, but we'll see. And my hope is that we can report on these results next year at the National Planning Conference. I also want to reference a 2017 international survey that we did with AARP and the International Division of APA that was a survey of planners asking them about their approaches to livable communities for all ages. And we had about 600 planners respond to that. Common across all of these surveys is the importance of physical design and attention to social norms and the critical role of public participation. So back to this point of an all ages approach, I just want to point out to you that while the World Health Organization has an age-friendly cities initiative, which basically they mean old age, UNICEF has a child-friendly cities initiative. And if you look at the core components for each, you'll notice there's a lot of overlap. So I don't see any reason why we can't take a multi-generational approach. And I like to think about it in terms of thinking about your average capacity, that orange line at the bottom of the chart, where as you're young, you learn to crawl and walk and ride a bike and get a bus pass and get your driver's license. In the U.S. context, driving is very important. And then at some point later in life, you may give up driving. And so in order to increase the independence of people at the very young ages and the very old ages, we need to have more inclusive design. That's the physical part. And when we do that, those of us caught in the middle, these folks, us in the middle between younger and older folks that we care about, we also get more time back. But in many communities, we can't change the physical design. I'm very interested in rural communities and the challenges they face. And so we have to make up for inadequate design with better service provision. And at the two ends of the life cycle, we especially need more service provision. So we need to think about design and services together. Another reason for a multi-generational approach is fiscal. This red line shows state and local expenditure by age. And what you see is that there's a bump up between ages 5 to 18, basically, which is public schooling, which is primarily a state and local function. And then you see an increase after about age 75. And this is paratransit, extremely expensive. And what we're seeing with an aging society, we can expect these costs to increase. And at the federal level, which is the black line, there's an effort on the part of Congress to reduce federal responsibility for addressing aging concerns. So we can expect a lot of increased pressure at the older end of the life cycle on state and local governments. But we also have a huge problem down here at the beginning. We as a nation underinvest in our youngest children. This is foolhardy because they are our future. And it's also terribly inequitable. So we need to be thinking about what we can do to support children and families of young children, raise them up to the kinds of investment that we start putting in at age 5. And I think we can do this by thinking about the needs of the very young and the very old simultaneously. When we did our survey back in 2013, we asked, is it easier to raise local funds, bonds, and taxes if facilities are for seniors only, children only, or all ages? Well, guess what? If we come together, you can get more support from your population. And we look at examples of that, like schools and youth and senior centers and libraries. These are places where you can promote participation. You can create a space to encourage reciprocal exchange and new resident and next generation integration. These are really important challenges and problems for our communities, and we can actually use our centers, our libraries as places for this. And it's important, folks, because not only is there an age equity concern, there's an income equity concern and an ethnic and racial equity concern. The majority of older Americans are white. The majority of younger residents in our communities are people of color, and they are lower income. If we can design a all-age approach, we can meet the needs of the aging population and at the same time be addressing the needs of our younger, more ethnically diverse, and lower income population. That's our challenge, and I propose that we can get there. We actually asked on the survey back in 2013, is your community not divided by race, class, or old-timer, newcomer divisions? And a little less than half said they weren't divided, so that means the majority are. I'm hoping that we can shift that with the new survey. And we also asked, has ethnic or cultural diversity led you to new approaches to think about planning or programming for ages? And about 40% said yes. So there's a resource here. And we also asked, do you see children and seniors as resources rather than burdens? And the answer is yes. By and large, we do see our older and younger members of our community as resources. So this is good news. The other thing that we've been noticing is that planning can help to generate a market response. So we have this aging society, and there's all sorts of new needs and services that they need, and government cannot begin to meet them all. But the market could. There's an emerging market here, and what we discovered in a survey that we analyzed, the Maturing of America survey from 2010, asked about 41 different services, and it found that in places that engage their population, their older adults in this case, in planning and do plans that think about the needs of the aging, those places see more market response, private sector market response to service delivery. You know, the market, it's kind of slow. And when it's needs of older adults or young children, they don't always see them. But planning can help lift that up. Planning can also create a space to be more supportive of informal networks of family, friends, and neighbors. We tend to think about the inclusive design, the physical side, the formal government services. But what I'm saying is we have a critical role to play in stimulating market service response and in acknowledging and supporting informal networks. I think that's our future. So to do this, we have to move beyond our traditional planning, comprehensive planning, building codes. That's all really important, but we need to move to participation, services, and institutions as well. That's the challenge we face. Where are we? Well, we asked, does your community have an emergency plan, a comprehensive plan, an economic development plan? And then does that plan specifically address the needs of seniors or children and youth? Hey folks, We got a ways to go here. I'm hoping that when we do the 2019 survey, we'll see that more than 2/3 address the needs among of seniors and children in their emergency plans, and hopefully more than 1/3 begin to address them in economic development plans. This is where we need to go. Unfortunately, most communities lack good design. The majority of communities don't have neighborhood schools in the majority of their community. They might have, we're asking if it's in over, here is it over, in this case it's over 70% of the community has neighborhood schools. In urban areas that's true. In rural areas you're closer to 40%. Sidewalk systems connecting neighborhoods, playgrounds within a half mile, access to fresh food markets, public gathering space, mixed use, complete streets, bike lanes. I'm expecting major improvement in all of these areas with the 2019 survey, because there's been a lot of work done by planners to move us there. But even if you're in a neighborhood that doesn't have good design, you can ameliorate bad design with good norms of use. I had some students working in Rome, Italy. We have an exchange program there. And we had them in this neighborhood that had been largely self-built without planning. Note, no sidewalks, no parking, cars just parked in the middle of the road, but people walking down the center of it. And what's happened in this community is the norms of travel in the interior neighborhood street is to be very slow, because there's mixed use going on in the street. It's a complete street normatively. Physically, it looks awful, but normatively, they've achieved the benefit of a complete street. Transportation is an area where we've seen a lot more progress than in housing. When you look at the future, which is what are your zoning codes requiring, mandating a sidewalk system, promoting parks and recreation facilities, street connections, pedestrian-friendly guidelines, you see that our zoning is better than that earlier slide I showed you of our actual practice. But we've still got a ways to go, and we're doing less well in issues around childcare and housing than we are in issues with respect to transportation. Finally, one of the things that's critically important for a multi-generational planning approach is to have cross-agency partnerships. And so we asked, are any of the following engaged in cross-agency partnerships to serve children or seniors? And look who's at the top of the list: libraries, parks and recreation department, and school districts. These are not the normal partners for planners. Look who's at the bottom: transportation or highway department, planning department, economic development agency. These are our partners. So I think we can help move them along. And I'm hoping that with the 2019 survey, we're going to see these bars grow a little bit, maybe even the order change. Libraries and schools can be really important resources for supporting intergenerational planning. So we asked questions on the survey about joint use for schools, and only about half of the local governments that responded said they had joint use agreements with schools. I mean, you can do this to share facilities, playing fields, gyms, computer labs. In many communities where you don't have parks or recreational facilities, you might have a school that you could use if it were kept open after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. What we see is very little participation between school districts and local governments on educational facility planning. And many times they're exempt from having to bother with planning and zoning, but this is something it's an opportunity missed, and we need to figure out how to do it. We find that when the local government has tax or budget control over schools, there's more willingness to have a conversation and do some collaborative work. We also asked, I talked before about the importance of informal institutions and norms, and so we asked on this survey, does your community have, informal sharing in recreation programs or neighborhood watch, which are the two most common? And then we looked down the list at other things like checking in on your neighbors, which is really important with an aging society, or mentoring children, yard maintenance and snow shoveling for elders, referrals. And this car ride sharing was actually not thinking about Zipcar or Uber, it was thinking about more informal networks like we have with T&I. In the new survey, we're actually asking more specifically about Uber and wanting to differentiate that from the neighbor-to-neighbor sharing, because we now know that this supposed sharing economy actually isn't really about sharing at all. Now I want to turn my attention real quickly to the 2017 survey that we did with AARP and the International Division of APA, where we were looking at livable communities for all ages. And these are communities that have appropriate physical infrastructure and social infrastructure to address the needs of all residents through an expanding life course. And again, we're mostly U.S. respondents, but we do have a significant proportion of respondents from elsewhere, Europe, the Global South, Canada, and Australia, New Zealand. I'm going to show some of the results that differentiate the U.S. from our international respondents to the survey. And what I want you to notice is that the U.S., which we see here in blue, is lower on everything. Adopting a policy, allocating financial resources, hosting outreach events, or signing a formal program. Now, it's possible that our international respondents were more motivated to respond. I mean, this is a opportunistic survey. It was well advertised throughout lots of different networks, AARP International, the International Planning Division of the APA, et cetera. But like I said, most of our respondents were from the U.S. But what we also found is that the motivation and barriers were different. In the U.S., respondents talked about the importance of external motivation and business motivation as a positive to begin to address the needs of an all-ages society. And so, again, we see this link between planning and stimulating a market response. We found that the barriers, though important, were not holding back action. Places that did more action reported more barriers. It's like they're aware of them, but then they push through them. The one place where we saw a problem was a knowledge barrier, but only in the rural respondents in the U.S. And I think this is because we have an urban bias in our preferred, recommended approaches to age-friendly. It's all supposed to be walkable and mixed use. And these are not features that rural areas can naturally create. And so we really need to do some more creative work on thinking about what are good rural responses to the challenges of an aging society. What leads to change? Across all the surveys I've ever done in the U.S., participation of elders and families with children is the most important thing. Yes, we need community leadership. That helps a lot. Yes, we need planning, comprehensive planning, zoning, and building codes. That lays the foundation for your future. But engagement of the affected parties, in this case, elders, children, families with young children, that is what is absolutely key. The good news is we can create child and age-friendly communities at the same time. We see that older and denser communities have more actions in support of an all-age-friendly approach. We see that professional planning leads to more action, but that participation of the affected parties, the citizens, actually has a greater impact. While we see some negative attitudes out there, they neither motivate nor make significant barriers to action. You can go ahead and move through. We do find that funding helps, and safety considerations can actually be a very positive piece. There's a number of papers that we have that we've written on this, and if you can't get access to them and would like to, please just email me at mwarner@cornell.edu, and I would be happy to send you these papers. And I will say, please take that survey for your community. Just when you sign on, it'll take about 20 minutes. Be sure to just have your zip code at the handy. So now I am going to turn it over to Fred Buzo from AARP.
Thank you, Mildred. Welcome, everyone. My name is Fred Buzo. I'm an Associate State Director for Community based in San Jose, California. And I'm going to talk today about AARP's livable community work and potential funding that the AARP has been granting the past 3 years now. So first, what is a livable community? Well, it's probably similar to a lot of language that you see in many of the general plans in and around the country. I mean, it really is meant to be a place that is safe and secure for, as Mildred was saying, really for people of all ages. So it's a livable community, but it's a livable community for people of all ages. As we know, there are a lot of older adults who have indicated that they want to age in place. Well, at some point, everyone else is, everyone is not an older adult. I mean, so whether they're young, have a family, moving into older age, folks have indicated that for the most part they want to age in place. Similar to what Ramona was indicating is that what we're gonna, for the first time in U.S. history, by 2035, we are going to have more folks over the age of 65 than people who are 18 and younger. And so it's by 2050, 1 in every 5 Americans will be 65 and older. And in 2060, the median age will have gone up from 38 to 43. Again, similar to what Mildred talked about, I'm sorry, to what Ramona talked about. This is happening in every state. It's across the board. So it isn't certain states. You can see here, every state is increasing in age, and it's happening faster in some states than others, but nevertheless, it is definitely happening across the country. So what is an age-friendly community? As I said just a minute ago, I mean, age-friendly community is very similar to a livable community. So, but more specifically, it's one that provides infrastructure and services that are affordable and accessible for people of all ages and abilities. What we've noticed across the country is that a lot of cities have focused on programming and services when it comes to older adults or to youth for that matter. But they haven't really focused on sort of built environment issues, particularly for older adults and also with younger children as well. And so it really is about creating a built environment that is good for people of all ages and removing these barriers that folks see right now. So you see here, as I said a little bit ago, a lot of folks, they want to stay in their where they live. They want to age in place. So sure, some people want to go out and move to a sunnier climate or live closer to family or friends, but the majority of people want to stay in the community where they currently live. They want to continue to be active and healthy and live in the cities and towns that they call home. And so, because most of the time, that's where the family and friends are, and that's what they're comfortable with. That's where they are more familiar with their surroundings, and people are able to get around and walk when they are no longer able to drive. And so it's important to understand that we have to build cities out and build communities out in a way that is going to allow the older adults to do that, to live, play, and socialize and walk to these locations that they want to be at. One thing that we've done at AARP is we've come up with an AARP Community Challenge Grant. The first Community Challenge Grant program was in 2017. And this program is open to nonprofits and government entities. And it is open to other entities as well, even private organizations, but that's really determined on a case-by-case basis. And so it really is an opportunity for organizations and local governments that have short-term projects that are, quote unquote, shovel ready in the area of livability. So in 2017, we invested $780,000 in these quick action projects. 2018 went up to 1.3 million. The 2019 winners will not be announced until July 17th. So I can't tell you exactly how much these grants will total. But given the increase from 2017 to 2018, it'll probably be a little bit more than 1.3 million, but cannot exactly say how much. 2020, the program will be back. The way it works is, just to give you an idea of how quick this grant process works, applications were due on April 17th of this year. Winners will be announced July 17th. And it is expected that your projects will be completed by November 4th. And that's a quick turnaround. But the kinds of projects that we're really looking at are those, tactical urbanism type of projects or placemaking projects, pop-up projects, projects that can demonstrate tangible value of smart cities, but at the same time, deliver almost an idea sometimes. I know a lot of times, I used to work for local government, so I know a lot of times when an entity would come to us and provide us with an idea, we just couldn't see it. The first response of local government many times is to just say no. So what we're hoping is that these projects that this community challenge grant is going to fund can put in place a visual, a tangible product that can then show local governments what is possible. And so we want it to not just be a temporary thing. We're hoping that it leads to something more permanent if the parties that are all a part of it, if the key stakeholders agree that it is something that they should move forward on. But so we're hoping that that's what these projects lead to. So what makes a community a great place to live? It's just kind of hard to see. It's a little blurry, but the 8 domains of livability, this is something that the World Health Organization came up with. AARP has now adopted it. And you can read what the 8 domains of livability are here. Primarily what I would like to do is we would really want to focus on the 3 key sort of built environment domains, which are housing, outdoor spaces and buildings, and transportation. And so the Community Challenge Grant, while it applies to all of these domains, it seems as if, given the past winners, a lot of it has been focused on those 3 built environment domains. Each city, when they become an age-friendly community, they adopt a commitment, or they make a commitment to become age-friendly and adopt a commitment to doing these 8 domains in order to become age-friendly. But some cities do more. Some have 9, some have 10 domains. I think Portland might have like 13 or something like that. And so you don't have to stick to these 8 domains, but this is a baseline. So this is a minimum of what we would want folks to commit to at the local level. So this is an example of one of the recipients of a 2018 Community Challenge Grant. This is in City Heights in the San Diego area. And this was a structure that was created at a intersection that had a lot of pedestrian fatalities. And so they wanted to create something that was just more visual and a gathering place for folks in the hope that it would slow traffic down. This is in the city of Chula Vista, again, in and around the San Diego area. And this was something, this grant helped host educational trainings and events to increase public transportation ridership in the area. Florence Fang Garden. This is in San Francisco. This was funding to increase not just participation, but also the quality of this community garden. West Sacramento. This was also, well, West Sacramento, I guess it's in the name. It's just literally west of Sacramento. And so this grant was for the city in order to engage residents to participate in a ride and bike share program. And this particular program, the one in West Sacramento, has been really successful. And so we're keeping an eye on that one. We're hoping that then they can leverage the funding that we've provided them in order to get funding from their regional entities. Walk Long Beach. This was a grant that is meant to increase walkability and host walking events that obviously have benefits on many levels, socially and also healthy living. This was from 2017. This is an ADU. It was an attached ADU in Santa Cruz, and what we did here is we provided them essentially with a little bit of gap funding. They needed just a little bit of funding to make this truly age friendly. You had an older couple, they were having a difficult time getting in and out of their home, and so this gap funding enabled them to put in ramps in order to get in and out of their home. And provided sort of walkways that were appropriate for their age and for their current physical condition. We have these publications online. They're free, and at the end I'll have a link for you where you can get these publications. They are free, and they cover the 8 domains that talked about previously, but it also has some really basic information on how to go out and engage the community. I know that every community is different, and there is no one size fits all for that, but this is many times will just provide sort of a baseline so that you can then get started on your own engagement strategy in your respective communities. And then other topics are covered as well. We also have a yearly publication where we highlight areas in and around the country that have cities, that have good ideas and the energy to push these ideas forward. And when these ideas have come to fruition, and it just isn't built environment stuff. I mean, we have examples such as participatory budgeting and things like that, or programs to increase transit ridership. So it's not just built environment projects that are featured in here, but also this is available online, and you can find that on the following slide. I'll give you the link. So you can visit us at aarp.org/livable. We have a newsletter for Livable Communities work, and it's right there on the screen. The Community Challenge Grant application will be back in 2020. It'll probably be a similar timeline, but can't say exactly. So think, applications due April. But I would start to think about projects that might fit within the parameters of the Community Challenge grant. You can also find that on the Livable Communities link that I'm sharing with you here. So if you just go there and then look at Community Challenge grant, you should find it there. And now I'm going to turn it over to Caroline Cicero.
Thank you, Fred. Is my screen showing?
1 second. No, not yet. Let me.
All right. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm so pleased to be here. My name is Caroline Cicero, and I am a professor at USC's Leonard Davis School of Gerontology in Los Angeles. I have a background in urban planning and social work as well. I worked for the LA County Community Development Commission. I worked for a private planning firm. I wrote general plans and housing elements, AB 1290s, consolidated plans, etc. So I'm pleased to be here today to take it to another level, which is to talk about the local university as an age-friendly community. Oops. All right. So as you know, we've discussed the World Health Organization. We've heard from Fred about AARP. Here in California, we're very excited that Governor Newsom is really interested in a master plan on aging, and there's many bills in front of our legislature that are addressing this. There's a community development summit next week where people can contribute to the master plan on aging. Here in Los Angeles County, the county is doing a feasibility study on combining the city and county efforts regarding aging, because right now, you know, you have public health, you have community development commission, you have the city, aging services, anyway. And so there's a feasibility study underway. We're looking forward to seeing the results of that soon. As you may know, the mayor of Los Angeles designated LA as an age-friendly city. So the city and county are working together in the Purposeful Aging Initiative. And then underneath that, we have USC as well as UCLA, Cal State Long Beach so far are 3 universities that have joined the Age-Friendly University Global Network, 3 universities here in Southern Cal. So there's others in California and throughout the country. It's a growing movement, and I'm going to share it with you today. First, let me talk a little bit about Los Angeles County. We have a growing aging population. As you can see from the blue line, the Latino baby boomers population will be increasing dramatically after 2030. 2030 is right around the corner. And the reason we in gerontology are so interested in the year 2030 is because baby boomers will all be 65 to 85 years old. The oldest baby boomers right now being Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, and George W. Bush, all turning 73 this year. So by 2050, our baby boomers will all be 85 to 105 years old, which is why you might hear those dates of 2030 and 2050 quite often. So that was the 65 and up population. When we look at the 85 and up population, we see that we're going to have 750,000 people 85 and up in Los Angeles County in just a couple decades. And so that's really important when we look at the population, because we want to know what kind of specific risk factors are applicable to the 85 up population. 1 out of 2 people may have dementia, 1 out of 2 people 85 and up may fall each year. They're more at risk for being homebound, etc. So the 85 and up population is really important when we look at what's happening in our local communities. As I mentioned, Cal State Long Beach and UCLA have joined along with USC in joining the Age-Friendly University Network. And just like AARP and WHO have their city and community network, the Age-Friendly University Global Network is growing, as I mentioned as well. It started at Dublin City University not even that long ago. Universities commit to 10 principles instead of the 8 domains that AARP outlined for you a minute ago. Age-Friendly Universities has 10 principles. So consider, you can look up your local university to see if your universities have joined the network. If you just look up Age-Friendly University Global Network, you can see the growing list. And if they haven't, I encourage you to seek out some people on campus whether it's people in the medical school, social work, urban planning, policy, gerontology, physical therapy. It's an interdisciplinary program, so I encourage you to encourage your local university to join. There's these 10 principles, and we found at USC when we committed to joining the network last year that we're already doing most of these principles. So we haven't actually come up with a whole lot of new programs thus far. We're just really trying to recognize the positive things in these areas that we're doing, and then we can take stock of the new outreach that we would like to do. So encourage career development of people who may be pursuing second careers, look at intergenerational learning, online education, our research agenda. We're already doing research in many, many different areas having to do with aging, etc. The retired community, I'll talk about in a minute. So anyway, so there are these 10 principles that universities or colleges commit to seeking, and I encourage you to look at those. So what is the USC Age-Friendly University Initiative? Well, we're an interdisciplinary working group. So last summer, when we joined the network, I started gathering up faculty, staff, students, alumni, people from different departments across campus to join our working group. It's very free-flowing, and basically, like I said, we're trying to highlight positive things that we're already doing. I've been working closely with Dr. Jennifer Swift in the spatial sciences of our undergrad institution and master's programs to work on age-friendly issues. So she's been a big part of what we're doing as well. We've been trying to teach GIS mappers to think about aging, and we've been trying to think students of aging to think spatially. So that's been a really fun part of the work I've been doing for the last couple years. So here on the left, you have a picture of some alumni. Those are our half-century Trojans, looking at vintage USC cheerleading uniforms. Our half-century Trojans are all 72 and up. They've graduated over 50 years ago. On the right, you have a picture of some of our volunteers, Andrus volunteers from our School of Gerontology, and they're testing out one of the new apps that one of our GIS students has created. So we look at students. We have students of all ages, and we have a lot of online students across the country and the world, and many of them are students who are returning to school after being, away from the academic institution for many years. Many are in their 50s, 60s, 70s. We're looking at employees who are aging, our caregiving needs of our current employees, also our retirees. Many of our retirees stay living in the LA area. How can we better serve them? And then alumni, I mentioned half-century Trojans. We also have Encore Trojans, which are middle-aged people. And then we're really looking at community engagement. What is USC already doing in our neighborhood around not only our main campus, but our health science campus. And then we have satellite campuses, around the state as well. So what community engagement is happening and how can we improve? And then of course, research. We receive a lot of funding for Alzheimer's research, not only in the School of Gerontology, but also in the med school and other areas of school. So how can we highlight and accentuate research that has to do with aging? I did a little survey of some of our numbers. We have about 2,500 students as of last year who were 40 and up. 10% of all graduate students are 40 and up. And as I already mentioned, many are online and returning students. This is a picture of Alfonso Gonzalez, who realized he didn't ever graduate from USC. So he came back and did a couple more units, and he graduated in his 90s just a few years ago. And then what about our students? We're training them to be in a geriatric workforce, right? We're training students from all corners of our campus in all professional schools and undergrad to work with the growing aging population and work in cities like yours. We're also looking at how to get experiential education for our undergrads who, typically they go to do a volunteer work and they end up tutoring kids, which is excellent. But there isn't at present an opportunity for people, for students like that to work with older adults. There used to be one, it went away because of logistical problems. So we're trying to bring that back. And then we also are looking at classes that have to do with just general life skills. You may have seen some articles that other campuses are trying to teach today's young people how to do things that some of us learned when we were in like home economics class or something like that. How do you plan for retirement? How do you balance a checkbook? Things like that. So my students in one of my classes actually asked for that last year. We need more education on planning for retirement, and they brought in the administration and talked to them about it. Alumni, we have about 12,000 who are over age 72. And so when they come onto campus, that's a special treat, and we need to figure out how we're accommodating them. We have Going Back to College Day. I spoke at a couple months ago where we talk about, any subject that might interest them, but also things having to do with their age. And then again, the Encore Trojans, I spoke to their group a few weeks ago about aging and health and wellness and incorporating joy into physical activity. Of our current employees, about half of faculty are 50 plus, and about 30% of staff are 50 plus. This doesn't include our hospital staff. Here's a picture of one of our dramatic arts professors, and she and an English professor got together and discussed how they wanted to have community members be able to take classes at USC, something that may happen at your local campus. Our retired employees through our Emeriti Center are one of our biggest resources. And so we bring them to campus for special events. They have access and privileges to campus. And for the ones that live, in the area, we really try to keep them as part of campus life. Why do retired employees return to campus? They may volunteer. They, of course, would go to USC events, cultural events, arts events, sports events. They might participate in research. They might be on special committees, and they also support students with scholarships. And then our professional schools, dentistry, public health, medicine, etc. We have many of our retired employees return to campus to be treated there. So here's just a little graphic that shows the Emeriti Center. Jeanette Brown is the head of the Emeriti Center, and she's done a great job of getting it built up and a place on campus. She joined the Association of Retirement Organizations in Higher Ed. So there are campuses all across the country that get together and meet regularly to talk to each other about their employees. Interestingly, when the City and County of LA Purposeful Aging did their needs assessment, they were very concerned with surveying their retired staff as well, because these are big populations of workers in California and in Los Angeles. Intergenerational learning is something we've really promoted, and the Emeriti Center does as well. So they try to mentor the retired faculty with students, especially international students really benefit from having a mentor who can help them work on English and help them, understand the system which they've just joined. And so here are just some pictures showing some of the intergenerational programs that our Emeriti Center has been sponsoring. A lot of really, really great programs. The Emeriti Center, by the way, also has, educational programs for retirees on retirement planning, what to do with your wills or advance directives, things like that. So they have a lot of practical information. Here is more of the pictures of their different intergenerational events, holding meals, gathering. Being hospitable and social is a big part of creating that social participation that Fred told us about, and which is so important. All right, just a couple more pictures. These are all from Emeriti Center's programs. Also, what about employees transitioning to retirement? I told you that half of our professors are over 50. We have quite a few who are in their 70s and 80s. Many of them are doing world-class cutting-edge research. And so, they're really a part of things. But what about ones who want to step out of the workforce and retire? Staff does that more readily than faculty. But how do we prepare people for retirement? And I think cities could benefit from, more training in programs like that as well. Since we have so many baby boomers who are going to be working longer, and there's a lot of fear of retirement, educating people on what retirement is. It doesn't mean you have to sit around and play dominoes or shuffleboard. It doesn't mean you have to abide by a particular role. that stereotypes would suggest, but there's so many things in an encore career and a next stage that people like to do today in today's retirement. Also, what about our other visitors to campus? How are we hospitable to them? I'm looking at the 2028 Olympics. USC is one of the venues, and so how will we be hospitable to all the people coming to campus for the Olympics, as well as everything in the next 9 years prior? Challenges. It is hard to get around campus. Commencement is always an issue. You know, it can be a hot day. You have people, lots of grandparents, great-grandparents moving all around. Also, just generally among campus staff and faculty, there might be a lack of awareness on how we can incorporate older people into campus. And that's just part of ageism that we have in society in general. So again, I mentioned experiential ed. We're trying to get our undergrads to have experiences, whether they're majoring in philosophy or anthropology, to have experience working with older adults. And of course, our professional schools already feed into that. I'm short on time, so I'm just gonna go through these a little bit quickly. Special events. So we're trying to put on some special events. USC's Diversity Week, we added age this year in addition to other special groups. And so we had 2 sessions this year on age as an issue of diversity, one about working with older students and one about working with older faculty and staff. So that was really important, and we're part of the university's diversity efforts. We put on a screening of Care to Laugh, AARP's first feature documentary. This was important to me because Jesus Trejo is a young person trying to make it in the world as a comedian, and he's caring for his aging parents. And so I thought this was great to show on a college campus. We showed that back in February, and you can check out AARP for more information about this really great film. We also brought Ashton Applewhite to campus. She's a noted speaker on the issue of ageism, and so addressing ageism in all its forms is part of our undergirding philosophy, so we brought her to campus. And in this fall, in October, we'll be celebrating the International Day of the Older Person, which is pretty much observed in Europe, but not so often here in America. So we're trying to put that on this year, and we, as the Age Friendly University and the School of Gerontology, will be promoting that. All right, we have social media, of course. We joined Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, try to get our information out there, both across campus and across our city, and in conjunction with other people in our network across the country and the world. So you can check out our Facebook page, our Twitter page, our Instagram page. Check all those out. Here's just different pictures highlighting some of the activities we've been doing from Instagram. This guy down here, Calvin Lau, he is president of the Retired Faculty Association. He's here in his marathon stuff. He came to an event and he had just run the marathon the day before. I think he said it was his 34th Los Angeles marathon. He's run them all. He's a retired dentistry professor. Here we have Miller Fong, who is an architecture professor and has had a successful family business in design and furniture for many, many years. So they're part of our community. Here's our new president, Carol Folt, who starts July 1st. And here's some of our half-century Trojans. Anyway, I am short on time, so here are our social media feeds. You can check them out. You can find us there. And also you'll have access to this PowerPoint and this video, but there's a special issue of the Journal of Gerontology and Geriatrics Education, where there are several different articles about other age-friendly universities. So I encourage you to check it out. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to our webinar organizer, Chris, and we will be open for questions.
Wonderful, thank you. So folks, again, if you have any questions, please type them in your chat box, and it would be helpful too if you could list who you'd like to answer that question. First one here is for Caroline.
Yes.
The question is, does USC do anything or plan to amend and add accommodations for students with small children and or just small children in general? I think perhaps it was either Ramona or Mildred who mentioned that there's little funding and research on our youngest population. So what is being done or could be done?
So is the question about research, or is it just about students bringing kids to campus? I guess I'm not really clear. But
The way that I'm looking at it is students that have small children on campus.
right. Well, I know last summer there was a message, maybe this is what this is about, from the campus saying that minors were not to be brought to campus. And then that message was rescinded. So there's a change in administration. We'll see what the policies are. I myself have brought my children to campus, and I can't really answer that question for the university. I don't know. But as far as research, there's many different divisions on campus that do research with children, and there's more and more that are trying to do intergenerational research questions as well. So you can email me directly, cicero@usc.edu, whoever the person with that question is, and I can try to find out more, but I don't have I don't have an administrative answer on that question.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Next question is for Fred. The City Heights open space, does it attract homeless? And how does City Heights deter the homeless from congregating in the open space?
Yeah, it's difficult for me to answer that question. I don't know whether or not it has attracted the homeless. I could see by the way it was built that why that would be a concern. I can tell you that based on my experience in other cities where you do have a large number of homeless, that many times having nothing at all will attract the homeless even more. And so, but I can follow up on that if someone wants to email me about it, and I can find out. I'm based in Northern California, so I have a colleague in the San Diego area that I can reach out to.
Thank you. Next question, Mildred, could you please provide us with the survey link again? Is it easy enough to say?
Yes, if you look on the slide that's currently up underneath my name, it says http://icma.org, plan for all ages. That's the survey link.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, thank you very much, Caroline, for putting that under my name. And please, we would love to hear from more communities. So much of this work is really biased toward the largest cities, and we're really interested in seeing what smaller communities and rural communities are doing. So please, please, please fill out the survey for your community.
Mildred, while I still have you on the air, there have been several questions coming in regarding what we do with our elderly populations in rural or even like exurban, suburban areas where, the infrastructure, it is what it is, and it's difficult. Where can people turn right now to look for case studies or ideas on how to promote an aging lifestyle in rural areas?
So this is an area where we need to just give a lot more attention. A couple of years ago, the Small Town and Rural Division of the APA hosted a series of focus groups where we asked, how would these things look differently for rural areas? And we were talking about things like, bring back the milkman, the notion of home delivered meals. Well, lo and behold, the market is beginning to discover that home delivery is going to be a big issue, even for things like groceries. We were talking about the unrealistic nature of sidewalks everywhere. You're not going to see those in rural areas, but what can you do to promote informal transportation networks? And this is where T&I is actually a model that some communities are using. Rural areas lack rental housing. And so we really need to think about accessory dwelling unit options, or maybe dividing houses, and what that would look like, particularly in rural areas. Informal networks are key. And how can we as planners support? So often in government, we think about rules that make illegal informal sharing or make it difficult rather than rules that facilitate it. And I think that was an area where we also saw a lot. AARP has some case studies that they have lifted up of rural communities that have taken the lead. But basically, it's time to move past the urban bias of most and the new urbanist, frankly, bias to most age-friendly recommendations and think about what a suburban, rural, and ex-urban age-friendly community looks like.
Thank you. Yeah, my wheels are turning. This is near and dear to me only because I have a 90-year-old grandmother who still lives at home by herself, and her keys were just taken away. And so, you know, we're even thinking on our level, how does she get to Trader Joe's? How does she get to church and to the senior center? And how do we keep her active and moving and getting her to the doctor? And so she doesn't feel homebound, you know. And so this is very interesting, particularly since she lives in a suburban area. This is, the wheels are turning. Mildred, another question. What is the, and this is good, what is the impact of the shortage of nurses, social workers, and other long-term care professionals for an aging population in rural areas? And what is the impact of these shortages on rural communities? I know you're saying, you know, obviously we need to do a lot of homework and a lot of magnifying glasses need to be put on the rural communities, but do you have any thoughts on the shortages of these types of professionals going in to help our aging communities in the rural parts of our country?
I mean, this is going to be a big issue. We need a balanced labor force, and one of the things that's wrong-headed about the current proposals for U.S. immigration policy is to bias it only toward engineers and people with professional degrees. What we need for an aging society is going to be, I mean, what are the two fastest growing occupational categories? It's home health care aides, child care workers. You know, these are landscapers. These are the kinds of occupations that actually help us age in place. And in rural areas, these occupations are in short supply as they are in urban areas. And we need to think about how we can promote in-migration of younger people to help fill these roles. And in rural areas, so much of what you see is out-migration of younger people. And it's not as bad in the U.S. as it is in, let's say, Korea or Japan, where you may have communities where 80% of the population is over age 70. So who is there to perform these other functions that are critical for people to be able to age in place? So a broader view actually takes a look at immigration policy. And Dowell Myers has written a book called Babies and Boomers, which says, you know, who's going to take care of you when you're old? Are they well trained? Do they have a place to live? So these are the kinds of things that we need to think about. And I think Fred has been dying to jump in here.
That was me, Caroline. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Fred, I'll get you in a second.
Actually, can I say one thing about that? The workforce.
Sure.
So geriatric workforce initiatives are part of the Affordable Care Act. You know, there are efforts by past administrations and advocates to increase our workforce to work with an aging population. Unfortunately, everybody thinks that the Affordable Care Act is only about whether individuals have to have insurance, but the reason it's so hard to understand is there are millions of different issues involved. So there have been efforts to increase, you know, our workforce to address aging, and we all need to recognize those and look into them, including those sections in the Affordable Care Act.
Fred, would you like to talk a little bit about the recent AARP event?
Yeah. So to Mildred's point, you know, AARP had for the past few years it convened a Livable Communities Conference, and it really was focused on large cities or, you know, mid-sized cities, more urban areas. But for the first time this year, and that actually just happened this week, we convene a livable community conference with a rural focus. And so I'm pretty sure that most of it or much of it is going to be available online because it was streamed. But if possible, I would like to be able to get that out to folks. I think your best bet would be to go to the Livable Communities link that I provided earlier and search for it there. If not, then I can provide a link to the organizer perhaps, and then we can go from there. But
Yeah, and just as a reminder to everyone, we are recording this session. It'll be on our YouTube channel, and we'll also have a PDF of this entire presentation on our webcast webpage, ohioplanning.org/planningwebcast. So you can catch all the links there as well. Next question, we were talking about a little bit about homeless and particularly regarding the elderly, homeless, and houseless communities. Are there any programs, grants, strategies to respond to the growing population of the elderly homeless? I don't know, Fred, do you want to start off with that? I'm not sure if you're the right person.
Yeah, that is a really tough question. Look, here the reality is here where I'm at in the Bay Area, in many ways, I mean, we are ground zero when it comes to the homeless population and the crazy housing prices. And so there is no silver bullet, there is no program out there, but the thing is what we're doing is we are going in and talking to local officials about building more housing and producing those types of programs needed in order to facilitate the development and construction of more housing. Because quite frankly, many times the commitment isn't there. The political will is not there. And so it's going to be up to organizations like us and many other partner organizations to really just hold elected officials' feet to the fire to get this stuff done. So I wish I had a better answer, but it's really just going into City Hall and knocking on doors and talking to local officials about it.
Fred, you had mentioned that through the grants, although they're short term, the idea is to provide these sort of like quick examples of what could be to get government officials on board. Could you go into a little more detail on some of the short term projects that have been completed? Or can you provide links or places for folks to go to look at some of those projects that have been done?
Yeah, so you can look at, there is a link and it's aarp.org/community challenge. If you go there, it'll give you examples of what was funded in 2017 and 2018. But just so as an example of something that's, can possibly lead to action is, the one we did in 2017 was, provided a little bit of gap funding for an accessory dwelling unit, which at the time wasn't as common as it is now. I mean, accessory dwelling units have just really taken off big time here in Northern California. And so when we did it in 2017, it was something that really wasn't happening a whole lot. And that wasn't the cause or, the impetus for everything to just sort of really take off. But it was, we were able to show folks in an area that was quite frankly ADU unfriendly from a policy standpoint, that people need these. Number one, there are real people behind these ADUs. It isn't just, folks aren't just building them for Airbnb. There are real people with real needs who need these ADUs. And so it also enabled us to then go out and tell that story to state officials and local officials on the issue of ADUs.
Thank you. Ramona has some additional comments on the homelessness and seniors. Ramona.
Yeah, there isn't any specific money on the HUD side for homeless programs identified for seniors. But that being said, in place in most communities that receive HUD homeless funding, there is what they call a continuum of care organization of service providers, businesses. So it's a great network that might be a place to also touch and connect with. And also your area agency on aging is is another place. I think also people who are dealing with the affordability housing question in regards to creating and building new inventory. I think among those three, there is a nexus in regards to this very critical issue that I wanted to add to the talk. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so it looks like we've run out of questions. So I guess we're going to wrap up a few minutes early. This is obviously an important topic. We're going to keep talking about it. Ramona and the folks at the private practice division are great in hosting webcasts every year for us on the aging community. So we appreciate you and what you do to keep this at the forefront. Again, to remind you, we are recording the session. It will be available on our YouTube channel. Just head over there and search Planning Webcast and we'll pop up. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and head over to ohioplanning.org/planningwebcast and you'll be able to download a PDF copy of this session. Just give me a few minutes. I have to get it up there. So thanks to all of you for speaking today and for joining us, and thanks to all of our participants and everyone. Hey, have a great weekend. Happy summer, and we will talk next time. And don't forget to register for next week's transportation topic. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.